Hello and welcome to the channel where we talk about all things Weishwarz and chill with friends. My name is Liam and today I have got the brand new product from the HOST warring card game, Divergent Paths. Now if you are new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button, and if you enjoy what we do here, please let me know by hitting that like button, as well as that check out my other social medias on Twitch, on X and on Discord. Links down in the description below. But let's jump straight in. So today I have the fantastic opportunity to show you and reveal the brand new deck building set from HOST WCG, Divergent Paths. Now if you're interested in getting it, you are able to pre-order it from today and it will release mid-January 2024. But without further ado, let's get this open. So here is the brand new box, the Divergent Paths deck building set. Very, very nice design of the box. I actually love how clean this is. But on the back, it says Divergent Paths, the first set for HOST, brings with it brand new cards for Authority, Emotion, and Strife. With 3 new hosts to choose from, tailoring your deck to your playset style has never been easier. Over 100 new cards, make your deck your own. Also contains tokens and everything else you might need to play HOST. Now this is a prototype, there is a typo, it's fine, we like to ned, but it is recommended to play alongside a HOST character deck, as well as the 3 new hosts that you can actually use to really build your own deck and really take the HOST card game to the next level with what you can build. But let's actually open this up and show you what's inside. Okay, so opening this up, we have a rulebook, a printed rulebook. Now it is available online if you don't have the rulebook, but there is some very brief rules on here as well, in a very nice little pamphlet. It's very nice designed. So I won't read through all of that, but yes, if you need to learn how to play, this is the way to do it. You also get a dice, just a green dice, really, really cool. Nice for your action point markers or for other cards, or for counter for damage. There's all sorts you can use that for, so dice is nice, dice is always good. We also get some tokens, so we've got some damage tokens, and we've also got some action point tokens, and they're all really nice in a bag here, which is all pretty cool. And then we have the cards. Now I'll go through these, and what I will do is I will take one of every card and show you what the cards do, but you do get 4 copies of every card in this set. So let's go through them. So the first thing we start with is a action point card. So you can have this in between both players and track your action points throughout a game, which is quite a nice little accessory. You also get these resource marker cards. So you get 6 generics, you get 8 emotion, you get 8 strife, and you get 8 fortification markers. And these are basically like lands, I guess, where you can use these to track your resource throughout the game, which is quite nice. And then we move on to the erratas. So there have been a couple of erratas made since the first release, and as a thank you for like getting involved in things like this, they have given you 4 copies of both of the errata cards. First of all, Nebulous with its new Storm errata, and secondly, Vampiric Bodyguard with its Impervious errata. So HOST has done a really nice job in just providing the erratas as part of this set. So if you want to get the correct version of the cards, might as well get the set. Pretty good. Starting with our host now, we have an Unbreakable Oath Yandere, and this is a 5/5 host, so quite weak and not the most hand advantage, but that's fine when you're playing an aggro deck. When you first play a fortification entity during your turn, it gains Rush. Basically, it means that on the turn it is played, it can attack straight away. This is really, really neat, and combining it with what's already seen as the aggro deck of vampires, the combinations of this with other fortification cards could be really, really interesting. And I think this is the birth of the first true aggro deck to HOST. The next host is a Torturous Existence, Graxis. If you control no entities, for the first time you activate an ambush, you gain a Strife resource. And it's a 7/7, so it's a very beefy host. It's a very much of a tank, and gaining 7 cards in hand can be a massive advantage when you are going to be doing a lot of drawing, a lot of trying to maximize getting your ambushes out, and it is just super, super solid. So again, I'd be very, very interested to see how this builds, and if you like to have a deck that interacts with your opponent a lot, I think Graxis might be the host for you. The final host that comes in this set is the Wandering Painter Rosella, which is a 6/5 host with, at the start of your first turn, search your deck for an environment form and put it into play. Now, I'll cover environment forms, that is a brand new type of card, so I will cover that later, but it might seem pretty weak on paper. However, having access to the environment forms and stuff like that means that you have a significant amount of flexibility in the build that you can play with. So I think this Rosella card will really open up the sort of builds that you might see, especially for dual or even triple resource type decks. Next up, we have the brand new entities that come as part of Divergent Paths, and the first thing we note straight away is that we get the host, the original hosts, as entities. First of all, Meridius Unleashed Fury. It is a 2 generic, 2 emotion, and 1 fortification cost, so a 5 cost, 7/6. This is a big entity with unique and rush, meaning unique that you can only have 1 copy of it out at any time, and rush when it enters for turn. Normally where it has summoning sickness, this doesn't. You can attack either a entity or your opponent's host on the turn it's played, and when this entity attacks, deal 4 damage to a target entity your opponent controls. That's really cool. And the way it's worded as well, it gets around cards like Mind Control, because even if you have to select a new target, it has to be an entity your opponent controls, so they can't redirect that onto your own entity, which is quite cool. And if you are able to get this out, this could be a really good card. Now, whether you run it in a pure dragon deck, because an extra dragon in the dragon deck when there's only currently 2-3 at the moment is an extra dragon that's really good, or whether you run it with, say, Rosella and you run it with environment forms, so you've got multiple access to multiple resource types, or whether you just throw in environment forms into the standard dragon deck. It's got some real good options. But that is Meridius Unleashed Fury. The next host card that is now an entity, Amathea, Regent of the Deep. It is again unique 2/2, 3 strife cost. And it's a unique. When this entity is created from hand, return up to 1 target permanent with 2 cost or less that your opponent controls, and up to 1 entity you control to the top of their owner's decks. Now, this is the first card that we have seen that can deal with Mountain's Peak. First of all, when in the original character decks, Mountain's Peak, if you could play it, it couldn't be touched, and the only way to come off the field is by its own effect. This lets you hit a cost 2 or lower that your opponent controls, permanent. It doesn't say entity. That means that Mountain's Peak, which is a 0 cost lingering sorcery, can be targeted by Amathea. So this is a fantastic card to deal with dragons. And again, you can run this quite easily with Amathea as your host, and it is just a super solid card. The next one is Annabella Enigmatic Blood Mage, a 2/2, 2 fortification cost, a unique with limit 2, which is you can only perform this effect twice per turn, and it's you may use a fortification resource to create a vampire entity token in any front row slot with 1 health and 1 power. So basically you can rush the field with this, and then also go, oh, by the way, I'm also going to bring out a token. Oh, I'm going to bring out another token as well. And especially if you combine this with the brand new host Yande, where if you play this will then come and play with rush, and then you get 2 new tokens. You can really flood the field and just do a lot of damage very quickly. So I think if you're running the rush deck, this is quite important. But that is Annabella Enigmatic Blood Mage. Now we also got 2 of the new hosts with their own entities as well. First of all, Kingsguard Yande. It is a fortification, 1 generic, 1 fortification cost, and it is an impulse, which means that you can play it at fast speed. So you can play it from hand, kind of like a quick play spell or an instant from magic. And when this entity enters a slot, banish 2 target cards from either player's drop zone. So you get to remove stuff from your opponent's drop. Again, there are certain decks that access the drop zone very well to recycle cards that they've already used, and you can get rid of those cards, which is really useful. And again, there's a 2/2. It's a pretty good beat stick as well. It's not terrible for 2 cost. This is a really good card. And again, being fortification, you can run it with the Yande host, and again, it's another option for being able to just play a card, do an effect, rush. It's pretty cool. Moving on to the final one, Graxis Deathmaster, and this is a 6/3, 6 generic, 3 strife cost. That is 9 cost in total. This is a big card. 7 health, 4 attack, and it's a unique impervious, meaning that you cannot target this card. And at the end of your turn, you gain 2 spirit entity tokens with 3 health and 2 power. So, yes, this is high cost, but if you can get these out, and you can make it so that you can run this in a deck that generates a lot of resource very quickly. Basically, you can bring this out as a 7 health. It will sit there for a long time. 4 damage is still a lot of damage, and the fact it creates 2 3/2 tokens every single turn is kind of pretty cool. Again, if you want to make sure that you never run out of entities on your field, this is a fantastic card. Moving on to the rest of the entities, we have Grace, a liner of stars, a 1 generic 2 emotion cost, 2/2 power, with Impulse, where you can play at fast speed, and when this entity is created, you may banish target entity you control, then return it to the same slot it was in. So this is quite cool, where if a card is locked down by the likes of something like Lilith from the Vampire deck, you can basically get rid of that card and then bring it back, and then because that card has now left the field and come back, it basically becomes a new card, and therefore Lilith's lock effect is no longer there. So it's quite a cool card to be able to deal with problems like that. Next one, we've got Michael, Archangel of Triae. When this card enters a slot, heal 1 damage from your host, and then when this entity is destroyed, deal 1 damage to your host. It is a 1 generic, 1 emotion, 2/2. Now, I think this card is really, really interesting, because if there is a way where you can play this and heal 1, and then remove it from the field without destroying it, i.e. sacrificing, you could heal 1 and then not have to take the damage back, which is kind of neat. And there might be a way of abusing this, so I'd be very, very interested to see what builds run Michael and how they run it to try and maximize his ability. But that very interesting card, Michael, Archangel of Triae. The next one, the Sorcerer of Margisak. It is a 2 generic 1 emotion cost, 3/4, and when this card enters a slot, destroy target form or sorcery. Now again, that also includes lingering sorceries, i.e. Mountain's Peak. This card is fantastic. I love this card. I think it's really, really good, and I think any emotion deck should run this at least as a 2 of. It is a very, very good card. It deals with certain matchups extremely well, and in general, it's just a very, very solid card. Moving on to Renee, Troublesome Magician. It is a 2 emotion cost, 1/1. Impulse, play at fast speed, and when this entity enters the slot, you may play a target sorcery from your drop zone and then banish it. So if you're having troubles getting sorceries from your drop zone to use them, you can get it from your drop zone, use the effect again, and then just get rid of it. So then it's just banished, which, sure, fair enough. Yeah, this card's pretty cool. I like this. And I'm sure there are builds that will use this very well. But yeah, really, really nice little card. Next, we've got Korthos, Wizard of Trenth. It is a 2/2 cost in terms of 2 generic, 2 emotion, a 1/1 in terms of its power and attack health. It is an impulse. When this entity enters a slot, deal 2 damage to a target entity, and when this card leaves a slot, deal 2 damage to a target entity. So yes, this is a 2/2. Yes, it's only 1/1, but it's on play, deal 2 damage. On death, deal 2 damage. So it makes up for, I guess, the cost of the card by the fact that it's guaranteed to do 4 damage. And it's when it enters a slot and leaves a slot. So you could combine this with the likes of Grace earlier, where you can go, oh, I'm going to remove it from the slot. Oh, I'm going to bring it back. Oh, because it's removed and it's because it's come back, it will deal 4 damage in one go. So, and the fact that they are the same trait as well, they're both emotion, I think they are definitely designed to work together. So Korthos, linked with Grace, potentially a fantastic option there. Moving on to Mystic Sphinx of Old, a 3 generic, 5 strife cost, and 8 overall, 8 health with 3 attack. First strike, this entity deals combat damage before entities without first strike. So basically you can attack, deal 3 damage, and if you kill it, it doesn't do damage back. So first strike's a really neat ability. And also, when your opponent draws a card, you also draw that many cards. Nice. And then when your opponent gains resource, gain that many strife resource. So if you can get this out, anytime your opponent basically draws or gains resource, you do the same. Again, and given that it's in strife, means that it will combo very well with the likes of Amalthea, and this card could be very dangerous. It's hard to get it out, but once you've got it out, this card is kind of nuts. and I'm very interested to try and tweak my Amathea build using this card as like its boss monster. And the fact that in Amathea, it's a high cost card, you can use cards that will do look at top card and then do something based upon the cost of that card revealed. For example, the Onlooker, where you can just spawn an 8/8 token because of this card. I think this is really interesting. I want to use this, and I want to see how Amathea builds with this. So, Mystic Things of Old, I think that's going to be an interesting card. Next, we have Goblin Battlemaster, 1 generic, 1 fortification, 2/2, with first strike and rush. So literally, it attacks, it can come in, it can attack the turn it's played, and then also, when it deals the attack, if it kills the entity that it's attacking, it will survive as well, because of first strike. Really, really nice card. Really simple, really straightforward, fantastic for aggression. Moving on to a new vampire, Caller of Blood. It is a 1 generic, 2 fortification cost, 2/3, with when it enters a slot, reveal card from the top of your deck until you reveal an entity card that costs less than this card, and then you may create that entity and then shuffle your deck. So this is a 3 cost, so you can play this, go, okay, let's go through, find a 3, 2, 1 or 0 cost, and go, oh yeah, I'm going to play that as well. It's pretty cool. Imagine if you combine that with Goblin Battlemaster, where you play this, cool, reveal Battlemaster, cool, fantastic. This will also be played as well with Rush, so this could be combined with Yanade, where you can go, cool, play this game's Rush, play this, oh, this has got Rush, fantastic. It's really neat little combo, and again, a fantastic way of like filling your entire field so that you can push damage extremely early and extremely quickly. The final entity is Flame Whip Therion, a 3 fortification cost, 5/1, and when it enters a slot or attacks, deal 1 damage to all entities your opponent controls. So while it doesn't target, it just deals damage to entities. It's only your opponent's entities, which is quite cool. And the fact it's only 3 cost with 5 health is kind of neat. I think this card could be really, really interesting in certain matchups where, for example, in the Amathea matchup, if your opponent's using Flood the Field and they have 3 1/1 tokens just protecting themselves, you attack with this, you just clear the field. It's kind of good. Reminds me similar of Blood Magic, but obviously doesn't impact your own entities as well. So a really, really neat little entity here, and could see some interesting play within the fortification aggro builds. But those are your entities. Let's move on to sorceries. And the first sorcery, which is a brand new type of sorcery, Sorcery Equipment, Sword of the Damned. It is a 1 generic, 1 fortification, and you equipped it only to a fortification entity. That entity gains 1 health, 1 power, and impervious, making it so it can't target it. And then at the end of your turn, if your opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw a card. Again, in an aggro deck, this card is really, really good. You have a thing out, you make it, say it's a 2/2, make it a 3/3 with impervious, and also because you're playing an aggro deck, you're going to be playing a lot of cards from your hand very quickly, which means that you are more than likely to have less cards in your hand than your opponent, so you also get a +1 at the end of your turn as well, in most cases. I think this card is really, really neat. So that is our first sorcery equipment, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of the woodworks in the next coming sets. Our next sorcery, Light from Within, a 1 generic, 2 emotion sorcery, and if you control an angel entity, banish target non-angel entity and its controller gains a generic. So it banishes non-angel entities, provided you've got an angel entity, which if you're running Michael, that's an angel entity, for example. So you can combine this with the likes of a Michael deck. Yeah, I think this is really, really neat. And again, the fact it banishes it means that your opponent can't get it back. At the moment in time, there is no way of accessing your banish zone as far as I'm aware. So the fact that you can just banish stuff is really, really neat. Moving on, Fire Spark, a 1 generic, 1 emotion sorcery, and it just deals 3 damage divided among any number of entities. So you can do a 1/1/1 split, you can do a 2/1 split, or you can do 3 damage to 1 entity. Really, really nice for just a bit of damage output. Just a pretty solid sorcery, to be honest, for low cost as well. Mind Blast, a 3 strife a resource cost, and it is if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their hand, your opponent discards 2 cards. Now you'll notice this artwork is very, very similar to the 5 cost from the Amathea deck, which is on play, discard, your opponent discards 2. So if you want to rip cards out of your opponent's hand, which in a way could lead to a win condition, because if you deal damage to your opponent's host and they have 0 cards in their hand, you win. So if you can maximize this output, make your opponent go down to 0 hand, and then just attack once, you literally win the game. So I think this card could be really, really interesting for looking for an alternate win condition. But yeah, Mind Blast, really cool sorcery. Moving on, Serpent's Caress, a 1-cost sorcery with Impulse, play at fast speed, and return target permanent with 1 cost or less to its owner hand and draw a card. So you can either bounce back one of your opponent's entities and then draw one for yourself, or you can return one of your own entities, draw a card, and then you can always, like, if that card's got a non-play effect, you can then play that. Moving on, Rending Strike, a 1 fortification cost. As an additional cost to this card, you discard a card, so it's a pay 1, ditch 1 cost. Again, you can play at Impulse, and then target entity gets -3 health and -3 power until the end of turn. Now, see, if your health hits 0, that entity disappears. But if it is a big beefy entity, say it's, I don't know, it's a 5-1, like we saw earlier, or a 8-4, like the Sphinx, you can go, fantastic, you're now 5 health, but also you're only doing 1 damage back. And even with the first strike, that shouldn't kill most entities attacking it, especially if you're running the likes of Nebulous. So this card is really, really good. I think there's going to be some really cool opportunities for this card to see play. Moving on to our ambushes, we've got Vanish to the Sea. It is when activated when your opponent creates an entity and you destroy that entity unless your opponent plays a generic cost. It is a 1 generic, 1 strife cost. I think it's a really nice card. It's a really, really cool little ambush, which forces your opponent that if they want to keep an entity alive, they have to spend extra resource, which might not always be possible. I think it's just a really, really nice card. Next ambush, we have Scream of the Deep. It is a 1 cost strife resource with a mermaid ambush specifically, and when your opponent would draw cards by card effects, you can negate that effect. Moving on to our forms, and I'm going to show you the environments. So first things first, you get 3 environments in this set, and each of them are impervious, so they cannot be targeted, and limit 1, and you can do both of these like each turn, I guess. So limit 1, so for example, for the Sanctuary of Sanity, you may spend a strife to gain an emotion, or you may spend a emotion to gain a strife. And it's 1 cost generic. They are all 1 cost generic. Burning Soulscape turns your fortification into emotion, and emotion back to fortification. And Scorched Keep turns your strife into fortification, and your fortification into strife. So basically the 3 resource types covered in this set can be swapped by using these emotions. And again, like I said earlier, you do get 4 copies of every card in this set. So these are fantastic. I think this is going to really open up deck building, and it really fits in with the deck building set. So it's a really, really cool card. Really, really cool idea, and I think they're going to see a lot of play in a lot of decks. The final 2 forms that we have Encroaching Seas, which is a 1 strife cost, and the first time you gain strife each turn, your opponent puts the top 4 cards of their deck into their drop zone. So you could utilize this as a way of milling your opponent out, which again leads to another alternate win condition where if your deck becomes 0, you lose. So you can force your opponent to mill their deck so much and basically force them to lose. So really cool form, and again a really, really good card in the likes of either Graxis or Amathea. And the final form, Initiation Ceremony, a 2 cost fortification form, and all of the entities you control gain 1 health and 1 power. So just a generic +1/+1 global effect. It does what it says on the tin, and for 2 cost, it's really, really good, especially again in a aggro deck. And those are all of the cards. Obviously, again, you see the battered pile here. These are obviously all the other copies of those cards. I think the set looks amazing, and I'm really, really looking forward to doing some deck building. But that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think to Divergent Paths, the new and first deck building set coming to the Host Warring card game? Are you excited to be able to do some proper deck building beyond just the character decks? I know I am, and I'm sure I'll be doing some deck profile videos very, very soon. A massive thank you to Jamie and Host for providing me with this and allowing me to be able to share this with you guys. I'm really, really excited to see what this does, and I am excited to say that with this set, we are going to start seeing the generation of some proper competitive events, which I'm really excited for this. I'm so happy that I can be part of this journey and to be part of this brand new card game. and I hope you'll join along for the ride as well. Coming soon as well, there will be some gameplay videos for Host, as well as, like I said, some deck profiles and some general discussion around Host and the sort of thing and the lore, which if you want to check out more about the lore, make sure you check out the Fantastic Universe podcast. I'll leave a link in the description below, and they are writing up the lore for most of Host, and it's really, really cool. Just to understand the world of Host, I guess. So check that out as well. But that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, and if you're excited for Host, let me know by hitting that like button, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think is going to be the most powerful card from this deck building set? Let me know in the comments below. As well as that, check out my other social medias on Twitch, on X, on Discord. Links are down in the description below. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!